Next, a talk about from hyper to casual and merge, how to soft launch and grow around hybrid monetization. And it's from new studio Lessmore. We've got Gus Viegas coming to talk to us on that topic. So,
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. I'll give you a moment to put your headsets on. Thank you. Thank you all so much for joining me here today. So, today is going to be an interesting talk because I'm literally just going to talk about some stories that I've had over the last few years. So, brace yourselves. I might have to go fast, and if you have any questions about anything, save them to the end, or maybe even after the talk. I'll have some things to share. So, today's topic is, again, hodgepodge of, let's see if this works. Does it? There we go. Today's topic, we're talking about different learnings. Mostly 4 different topics around 4 different companies. Not necessarily in order, and I'm not going to name names, but mostly from my time at Rovio, my current time at Lessmore, and some other companies. Let's start. And I would argue that we should start from not only the beginning, but where companies should really start focusing all of their attention on the most, which is monetization. And in terms of monetization, most of us think of it as a binary. We think, oh, we either do purchases, in-app purchases, or we do ad-based revenue. I would argue that, yes, they're massively different. On one side, one is hunting for whales. On the other, you're hunting for scale. So the thing is, you would think that you could mix and match them, but the thing is, your focus gets so splintered in a way. You have to think that a team that is good at hypercasual, let's say, which is a more ad-driven business, has to focus on scale, focus on speed. All of their learnings are in hours, not days. You have to immediately adapt. So you have to have fast, dynamic teams that are used to restart into a new game almost immediately the next week. It has nothing to do with the titans of our industry that have the purchase, in-app purchase models, in which you're spending months making models, trying to understand, predict the LTV, trying to understand your user in more depth. But I am greedy, so I believe that we can merge both. And there are some easy ways. So based on my past experience, and this talk kind of came from working with games that had 50-50 models, there are some easy wins, I think a lot of the in-app purchase teams are scared of ads because they believe they will wreck their retention or something like this. If you are scared, it's simple. Put some rewarded ads in a corner after a few days, something very simple. You don't need to go full-on interstitials, banners, blah, blah, blah. Try it, test the waters, because quite frankly, if you just serve free ad impressions a day on a rewarded ad, it already will multiply your revenue, and it won't take almost anything from the retention. Users are used to ads by now. It's way more easy than you'd think. Then, on the other corner, you have the advertisement giants of hypercasual. And they, quite frankly, a lot of them don't have the expertise for purchases, but you can start easy. So the idea with ad-based monetization models is that you're broad appealing. So why not try monetization features in the purchase side that are also broad appealing? So we all know the revolution that the Battle Pass was. And the reason it's a revolution, it's because it has one of the highest conversion rates in the industry. You're not necessarily dependent on 0.01% of your population to monetize everything. Maybe you have 1%, maybe you have 10% if you're lucky. Maybe I've heard cases of 20 and more. So I would argue it's not super hard to implement. So we've been talking about random sporadic learnings. Let's talk about what can also go wrong at a certain extent. I've had the privilege of working for Merge, but I have to say that merge is a very hot contested area, and it has some really good benefits and some really big negatives. And it's because at the heart, it's a genre that is between two worlds. The world of puzzle, that is more complex, that is more like casual. And on the other, you have the hyper-casual. You can see this by some titles being mostly driven exactly like a hyper-casual game, and others being driven exactly like a puzzle game. It was very interesting in a UA point of view, and I think this is the thing that I want to share more from my UA colleagues, which is you literally could pick an algorithm of your choice. You could try to focus on in-app purchases, or you could focus on cheap CPI, a la hyper-casual, and both would work. So what could you do? You could segment your user base into two separate piles. You could flag them, but that takes a lot of data effort, that takes a lot of implementation effort. You could try, nowadays there are more blended models in UA networks, but those are relatively new. The UA networks are usually focused on one KPI at a time. So I have to say, it is very tempting, but it's not as good as you'd think unless your team is already ready for quick adaptation on CPI, chill, hyper-casual style campaigns, and a long amounts of modeling on the in-app purchase and optimization on the other side. So, another cool thing. The second topic here, we're going to talk about the steps of a soft launch. So, let's imagine that you already have formulated your team and you know, hey, I decided to focus mostly on, let's say, purchases. So the thing is, each of your soft launch phases, I would argue you have to pick a KPI, you have to pick a field. You shouldn't necessarily try to test everything at once, or else it will be virtually impossible, unless your team is massive, and in which case, you wouldn't be listening here. So start with a technical launch. Never forget this, because when you're doing, for instance, an ad monetization model, crashes are a huge, huge ordeal, and it's going to crash way more than you think. So it's really important to do that technical launch. It might just be a day of UA, nothing really fancy, just something to make sure that your user base is not crashing massively. Once you're done that hurdle, go into your main KPIs and focus on them. I would argue one thing that I've seen on the companies that are the most successful is also user testing. Never underestimate it. As UA managers, we are usually focused on quantitative testing, but never underestimate the power of qualitative testing. Actually seeing videos of a user playing it for half an hour makes a whole difference to figure out why things are broken. Anyway, I'm just going over basics. But one thing that most companies on a more startup level don't get to reach is the next stages. It's more when you get to monetization. A lot of the people, when they're testing, they're focusing on retention first, and that's perfectly fine and reasonable, but do not forget your monetization plan from day one. And I would argue the most efficient way is to plan an amount of time, of session time, of users that is rife with opportunities to monetize later. So in other words, you're already planning, okay, I need 20 minutes to monetize this much to get to this LTV. So the first stage of soft launch testing is more around getting to those 20 minutes, getting that retention, getting that session time. But once you get there and you have proven that your CPI is at a certain level and your session time is at a certain level, now you're starting to fill up. Think about it as a bar filling up until you get to the very top and you get that LTV. Try to overextend your target, because once you get to scale, everything will get worse. So your CPI will get worse, your retention will get worse, so always overshoot your goals. And then remember, when scale happens, the KPIs will change. So you cannot validate a global launch until you kind of global launch to a certain extent. Anyway, here's some examples of things that have failed in the past. So we have trying small samples in both time or scale, which give golden cohorts, which is definitely a real thing. I cannot, I cannot stress enough It isn't a myth, it does exist. So I already have people laughing because they know exactly what I'm talking about. So that is one thing that is big no-no. Second no-no, it's a more recent one in the last 1 year or two. I would say do not trust only one ad network or one social media giant. Try to diversify as soon as possible because you never know. A game that might completely fail on Facebook might completely succeed on a different network. I have seen it. Also, on the other hand, if it doesn't work once or twice, don't forget to kill it. Celebrate it. Let's do it like Supercell. Pop open a bottle of champagne. Do not fall in love with your game as much as you care for it. And the last one, again, more specific to UA managers, do not fake your creatives during the soft launch. You want to focus on your core KPIs. You want to prove your retention. You want to prove everything that you have right now as is. Yes, I know that for mid-cores, fake creatives are super important. Great. Get your core checked first. And once you're done, you probably have failed. Because here's the thing, any company, doesn't matter how good it is, has a hit rate, not a hit certainty. So even if for some miraculous reason, 2 out of 3 of your games, or even 90% of your games are successes, you will miss 10% of the time. It will happen. It is inevitable. So one of the things that I really, really like to warn people is to remember that that happened. And it's happened a lot to me. After a decade, you will see misses. Do not take it personally. That is the last thing you want to do. You understand it's a product thing. I'm actually going to skip this one and go straight to solutions on how to move on. Because quite frankly, don't focus on why you had mistakes. Focus on what you can learn. So move fast. Remember to recycle the things that did work. Yes, it is possible to learn KPIs from your previous successes. Yes, if you were really good at creatives in UA, you can still get those same learnings and get low CPI anyways. You can get high retention again. I've seen teams, the teams that are good at one KPI, they will still be good tomorrow. And that brings me to the most important thing, is the team. Do not love the product, love the team. The team learned things, the team is still great. SWOT it. So by that I mean, check their strengths, check their weaknesses, understand exactly why they succeeded in some areas and failed in others, be objective. You love them, you want the best for them. You don't love the products, they're just products, they're not real people. So, but let's talk about what if things go right? And I have seen this too, and it's very nice. There's 4 lessons here when you actually succeed. First of all, I don't care what you say. I've heard all the excuses under the sun for not monetizing. I've heard, let's increase the retention because then you'll have more opportunities to monetize. No, just monetize them. You don't solve a problem of wanting to move an object on the table by moving the table. You move the object on the table. Like, retention is important to scale up, don't get me wrong, of course, but there's innumerous opportunities to scale monetization. So I've seen a lot of teams focus on this particular mistake. Second, blame it on UA. Why not? It's tempting, it's right there. UA, their CPI sucks, and they suck too, and your product is amazing. No, UA is an amplifier, a modifier of your success. The product is king. The product dictates everything. So yes, you can do fake ads and suddenly your CPI goes down. Yes, you can get a different audience that retains more. That is all possible. But it's a modifier. It's a 10%, 20% difference. Don't overestimate it. Focus on the product. And the last, more for the tinier companies, that the data maybe is too overwhelming for you. Maybe you don't have a good LTV model. Maybe you don't get it. It's fine. Simplify it. Doesn't matter. I've seen a lot of companies succeed with the simplest model in the universe, which is just how much money is coming in, how much money is going out. They succeeded. Do not overcomplicate things. Second, what do you model? So, if you do go into models, I would suggest 70% of the effort, or how should I say, 70% of the value of modeling comes from just understanding how does the LTV grow per source. So let's say you have a beautiful Unity campaign and it's doing amazingly. Measure out how amazingly it is, because on day 1 it might be over here, on day 30 is over there, and now you know by 30 you have this much amount of money, and you know how much you're going to spend. Remember, CPI is a factor of your LTV, so knowing your LTV is half the battle, or in this case 70% of the battle. But okay, let's imagine that you have a more robust data team, or more time under your hands, or you already figured out the LTV growth factor. What do you do next? So we now have talked a lot about iOS 14 and how you need to predict the LTV because you don't have as much data as you used to. I would argue at the aggregate, you still do have all the data that you want. Obviously, attributing it is a bit harder, for sure. But for that, you go to LTV predictor events. Great, model those. Then, this is the one that I see the most games companies focus on the most, is understanding their funnel from start to finish. I understand that. You are product-oriented people. You love to understand what's the funnel, and it's very important. For instance, if you do fake ads, you want a funnel that is consistent from the fake ad to the store page to the tutorial to increase the conversion rate, because for instance on a fake ad you have lower CPI but the retention is worse, so you want to take care of that funnel. Great. But why did you go to fake ads? Why did you focus on a funnel? Because you already did your homework, you already did the basics. And now, for those more fancy over there, you might consider that the CPI is different at every single point, so why not understand exactly how it evolves? Find your sweet spot. Understand what's the biggest absolute ROI that you can get. And for us UA managers, we like to talk about creative exhaustion, and there's more. Again, skipping ahead, there's infinity things to talk about. Now, the spiciest subject in UA for the last year. I would argue never, never again will we only do 2 UA channels, period. I don't believe in this. I've seen countless companies fail at this, and I've seen countless companies succeed because of this. Remember, it is perfectly fine to validate early learnings on a Facebook or on a TikTok or something. I've seen it work, that's fine. But that's at the very, very, very start. Once you're already spending 10K, 20K, 30K in the UA spend, you already want to go to the next network. You want to go as fast as humanly possible. It's actually, and I've tested this, again, in different companies, it's actually more profitable to go and spray and pray on multiple different networks with the least amount of optimization rather than sticking with 1 or 2 and optimizing and being really good at them. It's way more efficient. Yes, there's more paperwork. Yes, it's more hard to read the dashboards. There's way more analysis, but don't make it a paralysis. Just do it. It's simple. And there's more, but again, skipping ahead to the most important topic, which is less is more. And this is kind of the summary of all the things that I've been saying, I think, is that you don't analyze if you don't have a need. There's a lot of people that spend a lot of time just creating dashboards that lead nowhere. Fuck it. Go ahead. Analysis only what blocks you. And also, another mistake I've seen very often, read the data as is, not as you hope it will be once you release that amazing social feature that will change everything. It will not change everything. Your KPIs will be the same. Move on. Check the data as is. Oh, but the TUI is not ready yet. No. Weirdly enough, retention doesn't change as much as you'd think. UA factors actually change retention more than you'd think, rather than a good first-time user experience. And last but not least, don't do decisions if you don't need them. Again, oh, we might be leaving money on the table because we haven't launched on a certain geo, we haven't optimized for a certain geo, we haven't translated it. Who cares? Focus on what matters the most, be objective, less is more, and simplify those processes to the hour so you don't waste time. Thank you. Yeah. I don't know how much time I have.
You've got a minute or two, actually. Gus, that was incredible. A real whistle-stop tour of some great insight there. Yeah, that's it. If you want to pop that on. Does anyone have any questions for Gus? We maybe have time for perhaps 1 or 2 questions.
Again, I know it was very, very broad here, but it was condensed into 20 minutes.
It was great, yeah. It was great. It was lots of actionable things there, I think. It's just a great insight, yeah. Does anyone have any questions for Gus?
Not seeing this.
No. Well, what I suggest then is, since you're around, you can look up Lessmore on the Meet to Match platform. and find you there, perhaps. And you're around to perhaps this evening for a drink, or maybe tomorrow at the conference. We've got another day, so people can find you there. Yeah. Great. Well, look, thank you very much. Yeah, and please do seek out Gus for more insight. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Cheers.